everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a terrific show for you today with a reading from Stéphane Mallarmé's Collected Poems and Other Verse, translations by E.H. and A.M. Blackmere. Stéphane Mallarmé was born on March 18, 1842. Happy birthday, Stéphane, in Paris, and died on September 9, 1898. He was one of the main symbolists along with Baudelaire, Verlaine, and Rimbaud. Here are a few excerpts from Edmund Wilson's Axel's Castle, where I discovered Mallarmé and the symbolists 50 years ago. These are all quotes. I know we find Poe writing, for example, that indefiniteness is an element of the true music of poetry. I mean of the true musical expression, suggestive indefiniteness of vague and therefore of spiritual effect. And it's approximate, the indefiniteness of music was to become one of the principal aims of symbolism. Mallarmé was a professor of English, and Baudelaire had provided the movement with its first programs by translating the essays of Poe. What made Poe particularly acceptable to the French, however, was what had distinguished him from most of the other romantics of the English-speaking countries, his interest in aesthetic theory. It was in France that Poe's literary theory, to which no one seems to have paid much attention elsewhere, was first studied and elucidated. Paul Valéry says of Mallarmé that as he was the greatest French poet of his time, he could also have been one of the most popular. But Mallarmé was an unpopular poet. He taught English for a living and wrote little and published less, yet ridiculed and denounced by the public, who reiterated that his poetry was nonsense and yet were irritated by his seriousness and obstinacy. He exercised from his little Paris apartment, where he held Tuesday receptions and influenced curiously far-reaching over the young writers, English and French alike, at the end of the century. Here came Whistler, Laforge, Paul Valéry, Paul Claudel, Remy de Gourmont, André Gide, Oscar Wilde, Arthur Symons, and W.B. Yeats. For Mallarmé was a true saint of literature. He had proposed to himself an almost impossible object, and he pursued it without compromise or distraction. His whole life was dedicated to the effort to do something with the language of poetry, which had never been done before. He was, as Albert Thibaudet has said, engaged in a disinterested experiment on the confines of poetry at a limit where other lungs would find the air unbreathable. To intimate things rather than state them plainly was one of the primary aims of the symbolists. Symbolism may be defined as an attempt by carefully studied means, a complicated association of ideas represented by a medley of metaphors to communicate unique personal feelings. The magnificent readers in order of appearance are Corinne Conley, Gail Wronsky, Kay Weissman, James Cushing. Here's Corinne Conley.
Apparition. The moon grew sad, seraphim in tears, dreaming, bows poised amid the stillness of the steaming blossoms, derived from moribund violas, white sobs that slid across azure corollas. It was the blessed day of your first kiss. Daydreams that took delight tormenting me grew wisely drunk on sense of sorrow, free from pang or taste of anything amiss, left for the reaping heart by the reaped reverie. My eyes stared down at the old pavement while I roamed, when With hair sunlit, with a smile, you appeared in the street, and in the night I thought I saw the fairy capped with light, who through my spoiled child's sleep in former days used to pass, while her half-closed hands always dropped snows of scented stars in white bouquets. The flowers. On the first day you plucked huge calices once from the stars that snow forevermore, and the old azure's golden rock falls for the still young earth, pure from catastrophes. Wild gladiolus with the slim-necked swans, divine laurel of exiled spirits, red as the spotless toe of a seraph, spread with scarlet by the shame of rumpled dawns. Hyacinth, myrtle, and its lovely glows, and like a woman's flesh, the parting bud of that garden, Herodias, the cruel rose, who is steeped in a savage, radiant blood. You made the sobbing white of lilies, too, tumbling lightly across a sea of sighs on their dreamy way to weeping moonlight through the azure incense of the pale horizon. Hosanna in the censers, on the lute, lady, and in our limbo garden bed. Let echoes through the heavenly dusk fall mute, ecstatic glances, halos brightly shed. Mother who molded in your strong, just womb blooms to sway files waiting in the distance, immense flowers offering the fragrant tomb for weary poets wilted by existence. Anguish. I have not come to tame your body, beast holding a people's sins, or plow sad thunder tonight into your filthy tresses under the fatal tedium my kiss released. I want deep, dreamless slumber from your bed. Within remorse's unknown drapes it flies, and you can taste it after your dark lies, you who know the void better than the dead. For vice, devouring my innate nobility, has stamped me like yourself with its sterility. But while there dwells within your breast of stone a heart unharmed by any evil's tooth, I flee, pale, haunted by my shroud, uncouth, afraid of dying when I sleep alone. Sea breeze. The flesh is sad. I've read every book. Oh, to escape, to get away. Birds look as though they're drunk for unknown spray and skies. No ancient gardens mirrored in the eyes. Nothing can hold this heart steeped in the sea. Not my lamp's desolate luminosity, nor the blank paper guarded by its white, nor the young wife feeding her child. Oh, night, away! You steamer with your swaying helm, raise anchor for some more exotic realm. Ennui, crushed down by cruel hopes, still relies on handkerchiefs' definitive goodbyes. In this, the kind of squall-inviting mask that storm winds buckle above shipwrecks cast away, no mast, no islets flourishing. Still, my soul, listen to the sailors sing. Sigh. My soul rises toward your brow, where autumn teeming with russet tinges. My calm sister lingers dreaming toward the wandering sky of your angelic eyes, where a fountain of white water faithfully sighs, as in some mournful garden, reaching toward the blue, toward October's pitying blue, pale and true, which mirrors in broad pools its endless lethargy, and on dead water, where a fulved agony of leaves drifts wind-tossed and plows a chill furrow. May yet the yellow sun trail in a long, lingering ray. Alms. Have this purse, beggar. You never pled for it, a senile nursling from a stingy nipple to drain your death knell from it bit by bit. Draw some immense strange sin from the dear metal. Blow blazing fanfares on it, twist it round, just as we kiss and clutch it in our fingers. All these houses are fragrant holy ground when on the walls, soothing a sky blue clearing, tobacco rolls out prayers without a sound, and potent opium shatters its cellar. Skirts and skin, would you have those satins torn and drink blissful inaction in saliva at princely cafes waiting for the morn? To beggars looking in, they toss a banquet from lofty halls that nymphs and veils adorn. When you leave, old god shivering in your burlap, a lake of golden wine is break of day, and you swear that the stars are in your gullet. If you can count no hoards, at least you may deck yourself with a plume and burn it at Compline, a candle to the saint whom you still pray. Do not imagine that my words are folly. The old earth parts for those who die unfed. I hate all other handouts. Please forget me. Above all, brother, don't go and buy bread.
The hair flight of a flame to the extreme west of desire, if it should all unlace, settles a diadem of dying, it would seem, near a crowned brow of its former fireplace, but without sighing for more gold than this live cloud kindling the fire ever within. At first, the only one continues in the jewel of the eye, true or remiss. A tender, naked hero would degrade her who stirring no star or fire would, just condensing with glory womanhood, flashing with her head, wreak the escapade of strewing rubies on the doubt she would scorch like a joyous and a tutelary torch. That is a sonnet, rather beautifully written. Saint. At the window that veils her old sandalwood vial, voiding gold which used to cast its glitter in the past with flute or mandolin, is the pale saint displaying that old volume, the Magnificat, unfolded, from which Compline or Vesper song used to stream before, at this ostensory pane draped by a heart that the angel shaped in his flight through the evening shade for the delicate finger blade, as she is poising to caress neither old wood nor old edition, but instrumental featheriness, being the silence's musician. Funerary toast. You fatal emblem of our happiness, a toast of lunacy, a wan libation, not to the passage's magic aspiration. I raise my void cup bearing a gold monster in distress. Your apparition is not enough for me. I myself set you in the porphyry. The rite requires that hands should quench the torch against the strong iron gates at the tomb's porch, chosen for our feast simply to declare the poet's absence. We must be aware that this fair monument holds all of him. Unless the bright fame of what he has done until the ashes hour, so common and so grim, through glass lit by a dusk proud to fall there, returns toward the fires of the pure mortal sun. Sublime, total, and solitary, then, he fears to breathe out the false pride of men. We are, declare these haggard, teeming hosts, the sad, opaque forms of our future ghosts. I've got to stop there for a second. We are, declare these haggard, teeming hosts, the sad, opaque forms of our future ghosts. That knocks me out. Anyway, but with blazons of woe strewn across each vain wall, I scorn the lucid horror of a tear, when proud, mute, blind, the guest of his vague graveyard shawl, one of those passers-by, failing to stir or hear even my sacred verse, goes through a transformation into the virgin hero of posthumous expectation. That dream, the void, a massive chasm hurled by the fierce winds of words he did not say into the mist, howls at this man dead long ago. Recalled horizons speak. What is the world? And space, a voice whose clarity fades away, toys with this cry. I do not know. The master's keen eye as he went brought ease to Eden's restless wonder, whose last throes in his unique voice wake the mysteries of a name for the lily and the rose. Is none of this destiny enduring? None? Forget so dark a credo, everyone. Radiant, eternal genius leaves no shade. Mindful of your desires, I wish to see in our task the ideal that our stars' parks have laid upon us. For this man who vanished recently, a solemn stir of words stay alive in the air in honor of the calm catastrophe. If the huge, clear bloom, a purple ecstasy, which his diaphanous gaze remaining there, rain and diamond on these flowers that never fade away, isolates in the hour and radiance of day. Already, within these true groves we stay, where the true poet's broad and humble gestures much must keep them from dreams, those enemies of his trust. So when he rests in pride at break of day, when ancient death is as for Gautier, not to speak, nor to open his consecrated eyes, an ornamental tribute of the path may rise, the solid tomb bedding all forms of blight and grudging silence and the massive night. Prose. Hyperbole. Can you not rise from my memory triumph crowned today, a magic scrawl which lies in a book that is iron bound? For by my science I instill the hymn of spiritual hearts in the work of my patient will. Atlases, herbals, sacred arts. Sister, we strolled and set our faces, we were two, so my mind declares, toward various scenic places, comparing your own charms with theirs. The reign of confidence grows troubled when for no reason it is stated of this noon region which our doubled unconsciousness has penetrated, that its site, soil of hundredfold irises, was it real? How well they know. Bears no name that the gold trumpet of summertime can tell. Yes, in an isle the air had charged not with mere visions, but with sight, every flower spread out and enlarged at no word that we could recite. And so immense they were that each was usually garlanded with a clear contour, and this breach parted it from the garden bed. Ideas, glory of long desire, all within me rejoiced to see the irid family aspire to this new responsibility. But sister, a wise comforter, carried her glance no further than a smile, and as if heeding her, I labor on my ancient plan. Let the litigious spirit know, as we are silent in this season, the manifold lily's stem would grow to a size far beyond our reason, not as the shore in drearisome sport weeps when it is fraudulent, claiming abundance should have come in my initial wonderment, hearing the heavens and map that gave endless evidence close at hand by the very receding wave that there was never such a land. The child, already dexterous in the ways, she sheds her ecstasy and utters, Anastasius, born for scrolls of eternity, before a sepulchral chuckles, ha, beneath its forebear, any sky, to bear the name Pulcheria, veiled by two tall gladioli. Fan. And this is also a sonnet. And the fan is belonging to Madame Mallarmé. With no language but a trace, just a beating in the skies, so the future verse will rise from its precious dwelling place. Thus the herald, its wing low, this fan, if it has become that by which behind you some looking glass has shed its glow, limpidly, where grain by grain some specks of invisible scattered dust will surely fall, which is all that gives me pain. Like this may it always stand in your never idle hand. Another fan belonging to Mademoiselle Mallarmé. Oh, that first one was belonging to Madame Mallarmé. This one is belonging to Mademoiselle Mallarmé. Dreamer, that I may plunge in sweet and pathless pleasure, understand how by ingenious deceit to keep my wing within your hand. I love that line, to keep my wing within your hand. A coolness of the evening air is reaching you at every beat. Its captive stroke with delicate care drives the horizon to retreat. Dizziness, space is quivering. See, like one immense kiss which, insane at being born for nobody, can neither spurt up nor abstain. Feel how the untamed Eden slips like a buried smile of caprice down from the corner of your lips, deep into the unanimous crease. The scepter of shores tinged with rose, stagnant on golden waning days, is this, a white flight which you close and set against a bracelet's blaze.
Album leaf. Suddenly, and as if in play, Mademoiselle, who wished to hear some of the wood of my array of varied flutes, appear. I feel this trial which took place in a pictorial vista tended to have some value when I ended and looked upon your face. Yes, this vain breath limited as it was even in its final state by my poor crippled fingers, has no power to imitate. Your crystalline, utterly careless, childlike laugh that charms the air. Remembering Belgian friends. At certain times, when no breath stirs it, all the almost incense-hued antiquity, as I feel a widowed stone let her veils fall, fold, unfold furtively and visibly, floats, or seems not to bring its proof, unless by pouring time out as an ancient balm over our newborn friendship's suddenness. We immemorial few who feel so calm. Oh, dear companions, met in never trite Bruges, multiplying dawn in canals now dead, where various swans are voyaging outspread. When so solemnly the city showed to me those of its sons who trace another flight to light the mind, like a wing, instantly. The tomb of Charles Baudelaire. The buried shrine disgorges through its foul sepulchral sewer mouth, slobbering sod, and ruby, vilely some anubis god, its muzzle blazing like a savage howl. Or when new gas rings the wicks that erase shiftily insults suffered, as we know, it lights eternal loins with a wild glow, whose flight beds out accordingly to its rays. What foliage dried in any nightless town could consecrate as she can do and sit against the marble of Baudelaire in vain, departed from the veils that form her gown with shimmers, she, his shade, a guardian bane to breathe forever, though we die of it. The future phenomenon. A pallid sky above the world which is dying of its own decrepitude may possibly be departing with the clouds. Shreds of worn-out purple sunsets are fading within a river that sleeps on a horizon steeped in water and light rays. The trees are bored and ill at ease, and the tent of the showman of past things rises beneath their whitened leaves, whitened not with road, but with time dust. Many a street lamp is crushed by a mortal sickness and immemorable sin. Men alongside their sickly accomplices who are pregnant with the miserable fruits that will destroy the earth. In the troubled silence of all the eyes entreating the faraway sun, which plunges beneath the water with a despairing cry, here is his basic sales pitch. No sign treats you to the show within, because no present-day painter could supply even a sorry shadow of it. I am bringing you alive and preserved throughout the ages by the supreme power of science, a woman of ancient times, some primordial innocent madness, some ecstasy of gold. I don't know what it is, which she calls her hair, curves down with silken grace around a face lit up by a blood-stained nakedness of her lips. Instead of vain apparel, she's a body. And though her eyes are like precious gems, they cannot match the gaze that comes from her blissful flesh. From breasts upraised as if they were full of an everlasting milk, their nipples toward the sky, to glistening legs still salty from the primeval sea. The husbands, recalling their poor wives, bald, morbid, and filled with horror, surge forward. The latter, too, melancholy wretches, are curious and want to see.
Ever since Maria left me to go to another star, which one? Orion? Altair? Or possibly you, Green Venus? I have always loved solitude. How many long days have I spent alone with my cat? By alone, I mean without a material creature. My cat is a mystic companion, a spirit. So I can say that I have spent long days alone with my cat and alone with one of the last authors of the Latin decadence, because singularly and strangely, ever since the fair creature passed away, I have loved everything that can be summed up in the word fall. Thus, my favorite time of year is the final languid phase of summer that comes immediately before autumn. And the time of day when I go for a walk is the time when the sun is resting just before it vanishes, when the copper yellow shafts are on the grayish walls and copper red shafts on the window pane. And likewise, the literature to which my spirit turns for pleasure is the poetry of Rome in its final death throes. As long that is, as it doesn't bear any whiff of the barbarian's rejuvenating advance or babble the puerile Latin of the early Christian hymns. So I was reading one of these beloved poems. Their dabs of artificial color are a greater delight to me than the rosy hue of youth. And I was delving a hand into the pure animal's fur when a barbarous barrel organ began to play mournfully and languidly below my window. It was singing in the broad avenue of poplars whose leaves seemed dismal to me even in the springtime, now that Maria has passed that way with candles for the last time. Truly an instrument for mourners. Pianos glitter and violins illuminate torn fibers, but that barrel organ in the twilight of memory made me dream in despair. Now, when it was murmuring a cheap and cheerful tune, a tune that would gladden the heart of the suburbs, a banal, old-fashioned thing, why did its refrain penetrate my very soul and make me weep as romantic ballads do? Slowly I savored it without throwing even the smallest coin out the window, for fear I would unsettle myself and see that the instrument wasn't singing alone. The pipe. Yesterday, while thinking about a long evening of work, fine winter work, I found my pipe. Away went my cigarettes with all the childish joys of summer, into the past, illuminated by foliage, blue with sunlight, muslins. And back came my solemn pipe into the hand of a serious man who wants a good long smoke in peace and quiet so that he can work better. But I wasn't prepared for the surprise that this forsaken creature had in store for me. Hardly had I drawn the first puff when I forgot the great books I wanted to write. Amazed and deeply moved, I was inhaling the return of last year's winter. I hadn't laid a hand on this faithful friend since my return to France. And now the whole of London as I had lived it a year ago just for myself, became visible. First, the dear old fogs that muffle your brains and have, in that country, a distinctive smell of their own when they seep in under the casements. My tobacco used to smell of a dark room on whose leather furniture, sprinkled with coal dust, the scrawny black cat would curl itself up. The big fires and the red-armed maid pouring out the coals, and the sound of those coals falling from the sheet metal bucket into the iron scuttle after sunrise, when the postman used to give his solemn double knock, more of those which brought me to life. Through the windows, I could see once more those sickly trees in the deserted square. I could see the open sea, crossed so often that winter, as I shivered on the drizzle-wet, smoke-blackened steamer's deck, with my poor wandering beloved garbed in traveling clothes, a long drab dress the color of road dust, a coat that stuck damply to her cold shoulders, a featherless and almost ribbonless straw hat of the kind thrown away by well-to-do ladies when they reach their destination as being so mangled by the sea air, but which the various poor beloveds refurbish for many a season more. Around her neck was wound the terrible handkerchief that you wave when saying goodbye to each other forevermore. Reminiscence. This poem contains the very unusual word quincunx, Q-U-I-N-C-U-N-X, which refers to a square made of 4 dots in a rectangle with something in the center, like the 5. This is a quincunx, and it refers in this case to a town square in the middle of the town. Reminiscence. I, an orphan, was roaming in black and with an eye devoid of any family. At the quincunx, the tents of a fair were unfolded. Did I perhaps experience the future, and that I would be like this? I loved the smell of the vagabonds and was drawn toward them, oblivious of my own companions. No choral outcry through the tear in the fabric, nor any distant tirade, since the drama required the holy hour of the footlights. I wanted to speak to an urchin too unsteady on his feet to appear among his people, in a nightcap with the cut of Dante's hood. One who was bringing inside himself, in the guise of a slice of bread with cheese, the snow of mountain peaks, the lily, or some other whiteness that constituted inward wings. I would have asked him to admit me to his superior meal, which he quickly shared with some illustrious older boy who had sprung up against a nearby tent and was engaged in feats of strength and banalities consistent with the day. Naked, he pirouetted in the, to my mind, surprising nimbleness of his tights. In addition, he began, "Your parents? I don't have any. Come now, if you knew what a funny thing that is. A father, even the other week when he was off his food, he still kept making faces just as glorious as ever while the boss was hitting and kicking him. My dear chap." And triumphantly raising a leg toward me with glorious ease, "He amazes us, Papa does." Then, biting into the youngster's chaste meal, "Your mama? Maybe you don't have one? You're alone? Mine eats bits of string," and everyone claps. You can't imagine how funny parents are, how much they make you laugh. The parade was building up. He went away. As for me, I gave a sigh, suddenly disappointed that I had no parent. Sonnet. for Emmanuel Desésar. Often the poet catches my gaze, an angel in a folded breastplate who delights in the sword's flashing rays, or else, bright dreamer, displays the mitre, ornamental staff, and cope of Byzantine rites. Dante wears bitter laurels and funereal drapes where night and serenity entwine. Anacreon laughs, stark naked, and kisses a cluster of grapes, heedless of summer's leaves on the vine. Amid the scarlet flashes of their gay tambourine, all the great bohemians, fantastically decked in rosemary, pass by, spangled with stars, maddened with the absolute. But I scarcely care to behold, O Muse, poetry's queen, with radiant hair like an ostensory, a poet who polkas in a black suit. This last poem is the title is taken from the first line, Lady Without Too Much Passion. Lady without too much passion, at one time inflaming the rose, who, cruel or tattered and weary of even her white robe, unlaces it with crimson to hear the diamond weeping deep in her flesh. Yes, without those crises of dew and gently nor any breeze, though with it the stormy sky clears, jealous to bring some unknown space to the mere day, the true day of feeling. Have you perhaps a sense, let us say, that each year whose spontaneous grace is reborn on your brow is enough in certain apparent respects, and for me, as a cool fan in the room, is amazed to revive with what little stir here is required the whole of our natural monochrome friendship.
Thank you, Jim, Corinne, Gail, Kay. Why don't you all come on and we'll talk about the show and the reading and the poetry, if you would, please. While that's happening, what I'll do, since we started with Poe, I may have missed something with my hearing, but I will read a poem, The Tomb of Edgar Allan Poe by Mallarmé. Changed to himself at last by eternity, with a bare sword, the poet has bestirred his age, terrified that it failed to see how death was glorifying in that strange word. The spell was drunk, so they proclaimed aloud, as vile freaks writhe when seraphim bestow pure sense on the phrases of the crowd in some black bruise dishonorable flow. If our idea can carve no bas relief from hostile clod and cloud, O struggling grief, for the adornment of Poe's dazzling tomb, at least this block dropped by an occult doom, this calm granite may limit all the glum blasphemy flights dispersed in days to come. So thank you all for a radiant reading, radiant poetry, verbal brilliance. As Gail pointed out, a number of sonnets in there, and just a lovely language and lovely reading. So thank you all for such a beautiful reading. So let's start with, since Jim finished the show, let's just start with Jim and then go with Corinne and then Gail and then Kay to talk a little bit about the poetry and the reading, if you would, please. James Cushing.
Okay. Well, thank you, Harry. The translation of Mallarmé that I'm most familiar with is this one here from the University of California Press. This is by Henry Weinfeld, and there's a very interesting note in it about the first poem that I read called Autumn Lament. It begins with a reference to Maria, Maria was Mallarmé's sister, who, when she was 13 and he was 15, died. So, and this is the only this is the only poem in which he ever explicitly mentions his sister Maria and the trauma of losing her when he was 15 years old. The very end of the poem involves the barbaric sound of a barrel organ coming from down below. And when the poem was first published in a magazine in July of 1864, it came out under the title Le Orgue de Barbare, which means the barbarian organ. R-rated pun 100% intended, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. Mallarmé, for instance, made his living teaching English in universities, and so when he uses the word fall in the poem about autumn, or the word, the idea of the fall, he intends the English language meaning as well as all the others. Yeah. So that was a particularly marvelous one. The idea that the author really loves to read poems from the last days of the Roman Empire, that is a period of decadence, suggests, I think, his own attitude toward the society in which he lived, which he saw as fundamentally decadent. And I think a large part of his embrace of Baudelaire and of Poe has to do with their interest in the culture of decadence as well. It's as though when a culture is coming apart, it seems as if certain energies are released in it that artists find useful to contemplate.
Corinne?
Well, this is truly a learning experience for me. I was not at all familiar with Mallarmé, and I'm so surprised to hear that he was an admirer of Edgar Allan Poe, the poet that I, of course, grew up with, learning about and appreciating. But I had difficulty just getting the context of his the poetry that I was reading of his. It was much better today when Jim Cushing was reading Mallarmé's prose. I thought to myself, I should have been reading some of that. I might have cottoned on a little better. It's just what he was talking about. But I did enjoy hearing the other readers, and I think perhaps now I will read some Mallarmé, perhaps with a little more understanding. So thank you.
Gail?
Hi, yeah, I'm so glad Jim Cushing is here. I knew he would bring a scholarly touch to this event. I never studied Mallarmé, but I did read him a lot when I was younger, and now returning to him was such a treat for me because I see so clearly what I learned from him as a young poet, which has to do with a kind of allowable darkness. That darkness is something that you can put in a poem, that a poem can be framed in black, as it were, but also contain gorgeous language, gorgeous flowers, beauty, the things of the earth that are beautiful. And he does that. I mean, just those two little poems about the fans, I think, are so wonderful. And his wife's fan and his daughter's fan, and And the idea of a fan being a wing that you hold in your hand, I think, is just such a startling revelation. Of course it is, right? That's exactly what it is. And he pointed that out, which is absolutely great.
Kay?
Well, I am very upset because my poems were askew. They were not in order. So some of them was the beginning of another one and another one. So I'm very embarrassed about it. And I'm sorry about it. I did have trouble with it. It's very dark. It seemed very dark to me. And as all the poets, as I read them through the week, I get to fall in love with them a little bit more and more every time I read. But this time I'm just very, very upset that it was all askew and I was all mixed up. And I just, I said, well, I'm just going to keep on going. And I apologize to these wonderful poets and
Well,
to everyone who
They don't
watched.
understand. You were reading from the screen.
I was reading from the screen and they were mixed up. So one poem was not with another poem.
And
On
I
behalf of
apologize.
Stéphane Mallarmé, I accept your apology.
You read beautifully, Kay. And, just to Poe influenced the symbolists influenced people like T.S. Eliot, the Sick Hospital, one of the symbolists wrote, and the sounds and the senses as opposed to the reality we see out the window. So you did a beautiful job, Kay, as did all the readers. And, we accept the imperfections and we move on. So don't worry about that. But I want to thank each one of you for such a radiant reading, starting with Corinne Conley, Gail Wronsky, Kay Weissman, and James Cushing. And before we go, I am going to announce next Tuesday, Courtney and Ryan Bailey, Deedle Schur, Garrett M. Brown, Marie Pal Brown, Elizabeth Iannacci, Rudy Hornish will read their favorite poems. And here's Jennifer Clymer to take us home. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And thank you for saying that embracing the imperfections is what we do in the live show. And although we did have Kay come on over and we tested, sometimes things go sideways. So thank you all for your patience and your understanding. And I cannot wait to see the rebroadcast of Harry's Poetry Hour in the future from next week. I'm out for 2 weeks. I will be back on April 8th. And Harry's going to keep the ship righted and moving forward. I'm excited about that.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye.